My name is Susanne, and at 34, I thought I had the perfect marriage. 8 years with James, my college sweetheart in our beautiful Chicago suburban home. Until that Tuesday afternoon when I was sorting laundry and found a condom hidden in the inner pocket of his gym bag. We hadn't used condoms in years. My stomach dropped as everything suddenly made sense. The late nights, the new cologne, his password-protected phone. I never imagined that my decision about what to do with that condom would lead to a frantic hospital call that would unravel my entire life. Before I tell you how I exposed my husband's betrayal, let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button if you've ever had that gut feeling something wasn't right in your relationship. Before finding that condom, I was living what I thought was the American dream. I had a fulfilling career as a dental hygienist at a prestigious practice in downtown Chicago. My days were spent helping patients achieve perfect smiles while building genuine connections with them. Many of my regular patients felt like extended family sharing their lives with me during our appointments. James and I met at a healthcare conference 10 years ago. I was there representing my dental office, and he was showcasing medical devices for the company where he worked as a sales representative. I remember being immediately drawn to his confidence and warm smile. He approached my booth with a charming line about having the whitest teeth in the convention center, and instead of finding it cheesy, I was charmed. We spent the entire evening talking at the hotel bar, discovering we had both grown up in neighboring suburbs and even attended rival high schools. Our romance moved quickly after that. Within 6 months, we were inseparable. James proposed on a surprise weekend trip to Napa Valley, getting down on one knee in a vineyard at sunset. The wedding followed 8 months later, a beautiful ceremony with 150 of our closest friends and family. Everyone commented on how perfect we were together, how our vows brought tears to their eyes. My father's toast about James being the son he never had still makes me emotional when I think about it. The early years of our marriage were everything I'd hoped for. We purchased our dream home in a leafy suburb with excellent schools, thinking ahead to the family we planned to start. Weekends were spent renovating together, choosing paint colors, and planting a garden. We traveled extensively. James's job took him to medical conferences around the country, and I would often join him, extending the trips into mini vacations. We had traditions, inside jokes, and a closeness I believed was unshakable. We talked about having children, even converted one of the spare bedrooms into a potential nursery. But somehow the timing never seemed right. First, James wanted to reach a certain position at his company. Then I was considering advancing my education. The years passed, and while I occasionally felt a pang of worry about waiting too long, I trusted that we were building a solid foundation for our future family. Looking back now, I can pinpoint when things began to change about 6 months before I found the condom. The shifts were subtle at first, so subtle that I questioned whether I was imagining them. James started working later, coming home after I was already in bed several nights a week. He explained it was a big new client, a hospital system that could transform his career if he landed the account. His appearance changed too. He bought expensive new suits, started using a cologne I hadn't selected, and joined a high-end gym downtown instead of the local fitness center we had both used. When I asked about these changes, he said his company was emphasizing professional image more strongly, and he needed to step up to compete with younger sales reps. Our intimacy gradually decreased. He was always too tired, too stressed, or had an early morning the next day. I tried special dinners, new lingerie, suggesting weekend getaways. All met with appreciation, but ultimately excuses. I started to wonder if there was something wrong with me, if I had become unattractive to him somehow. I exercised more, got a new hairstyle, tried to be more adventurous. Nothing seemed to reignite his interest. Then came the phone guarding. James had always been casual about his phone, often asking me to answer texts for him while he was driving or leaving it on the counter without a second thought. But suddenly his phone was password protected, always facing down, and he would leave the room to take calls, speaking in hushed tones. When I mentioned this change, he accused me of being paranoid and invasive. Client confidentiality, he explained, making me feel unreasonable for questioning him. The business trips increased. weekend conferences that didn't appear on any industry calendars I could find, last-minute overnight stays in the city because meetings ran late, and he was too tired to drive home. Once I found a receipt from an expensive restaurant downtown from a night he told me he was eating hospital cafeteria food while working late with the administrative team. When I asked about it casually, he said he'd taken a potential client there and forgotten to mention it. His explanation made sense, but something in his eyes didn't meet mine fully. My anxiety grew with each passing week. I lost sleep analyzing conversations and searching for reassurance in his words. I began checking his suit pockets while doing laundry, scrolling through our credit card statements, looking for patterns, noting the mileage on his car. I hated that I was becoming this person, suspicious, insecure, almost obsessive in my monitoring. This wasn't me, and it certainly wasn't how I wanted our marriage to function. My best friend Taylor noticed the changes in me. Over coffee one morning, she gently asked if everything was okay at home. I burst into tears, surprising both of us with the force of my emotion. I told her about my concerns, feeling simultaneously relieved to share them and ashamed of my suspicions. Taylor listened carefully, her expression growing more troubled as I listed the red flags. "Susanne," she said finally, "this sounds exactly like what happened before I discovered Carl was cheating." Taylor had divorced her husband 3 years earlier after discovering his 2-year affair with a coworker. I don't want to plant ideas in your head, but these are classic signs. The changes in appearance, guarding the phone, emotional distance, unexplained absences. I defended James immediately. He would never do that to me. We've been through too much together. He's just under pressure at work. Even as I said the words, I felt the doubt creeping in. Taylor didn't push, just squeezed my hand and told me to trust my instincts. "Your gut knows things before your heart is ready to accept them," she said. "Just be careful with yourself whatever happens." I drove home from that coffee date with Taylor's words echoing in my mind, still resistant to the idea that James could betray me so fundamentally. I had invested 8 years of my life with this man. We had built a home, shared dreams, weathered difficulties together. How could I reconcile the James I knew with someone capable of infidelity? I told myself I was being influenced by Taylor's bad experience, projecting her situation onto mine. But the seed of suspicion had been planted, and no matter how I tried to uproot it, it continued to grow. It was an ordinary Tuesday when everything changed. James had left early for a meeting in Wisconsin, planning to return late that evening. I had the day off and decided to catch up on household chores. While sorting laundry, I emptied the pockets of his gym bag as I always did to prevent chapsticks or receipts from going through the wash. That's when my fingers touched something in the inner zippered pocket, a pocket I hadn't even known existed. I pulled out a single condom packet, not our brand, not a type we'd ever used in our relationship. It was still sealed, but the foil was slightly bent as if it had been carried around for some time. My hands began to shake uncontrollably. The room seemed to tilt sideways as I stared at this small object that threatened my entire reality. My first coherent thought was that there must be an explanation. Perhaps it was given out at a medical conference, maybe a colleague had jokingly given it to him. But deep down I knew. This was the confirmation of the fears I'd been trying to silence for months. I ran to the bathroom and threw up my body, physically rejecting the truth before my mind could fully process it. Afterward, I sat on the cold tile floor, the condom packet still clutched in my trembling hand, and tried to think clearly through the haze of shock. My first instinct was to call James immediately, to scream and demand explanations. But something stopped me. Perhaps self-preservation, perhaps a sudden clarity that came with the undeniable evidence. If I confronted him now, he would have time to construct explanations, delete evidence, prepare his defense. The condom in my hand might be my only leverage, my only proof that I wasn't crazy or paranoid, as he had been suggesting. Instead, I went to our home office and began researching on my laptop. How to Catch a Cheating Spouse led me down a rabbit hole of advice forums, private investigator websites, and stories from others who had been in my position. Some suggestions seemed extreme or illegal, others impractical. But one theme emerged consistently: gather evidence before confrontation. I called Taylor, my voice so strange she barely recognized me. "I found a condom in his gym bag," I said without preamble. "We haven't used condoms since before we were married." Taylor was silent for a moment, then asked, "What are you going to do?" "I don't know. I want to call him right now and demand answers, but everything I'm reading says that's the worst approach." "It is," she confirmed. "When I confronted Carl without evidence, he turned it all around on me, made me feel crazy for even suggesting it. By the time I found actual proof, he deleted texts, emails, everything that could have helped me in the divorce. Come over. We need to talk about this in person." An hour later, I was sitting in Taylor's kitchen, the condom packet on the table between us like a bomb that could detonate at any moment. Taylor's face was grim as she made us both strong cups of coffee. "You need to think strategically now," she advised. "This isn't just about confirming what you already suspect. It's about protecting yourself legally and financially if this leads where I think it's going." We discussed options. Taylor suggested hiring a private investigator, but that seemed extreme and expensive. We talked about installing tracking software on his phone or car, but I wasn't sure I could access either without his knowledge. Following him myself seemed risky. What if he saw me? "What about this?" I said, finally pointing to the condom. "What if I put it back exactly as I found it, but somehow marked it so I would know if he used it?" Taylor looked thoughtful. "That could work. But how would you mark it without damaging the packaging?" My mind went to my college days. Before dental hygiene, I had studied chemistry for 2 years. "I could use a UV reactive dye," I said slowly, the idea forming as I spoke. "Something that would be visible under blacklight but invisible otherwise. If I carefully opened the packaging along the edge, injected a tiny amount, and resealed it, wouldn't that damage the condom itself?" Taylor asked, concerned. "Not if I used the right substance and was careful about placement," I explained. "I'm not trying to harm anyone physically. I just need to know if he uses it and with whom." The moral implications of what I was considering hit me. Was I really planning to tamper with a condom? Was my need for confirmation worth potentially invading someone else's body without consent? Even if just with a harmless dye, I felt sick again, torn between my need for truth and my ethical boundaries. "Maybe this is going too far," I said. "Maybe I should just confront him." Taylor shook her head firmly. "You've been gaslighted for months, Susanne. He's made you doubt your own perceptions. If you confront him without solid evidence, he'll deny everything and make you feel insane for asking. You deserve the truth after what he's put you through." Her words solidified my resolve. That afternoon, I purchased what I needed from a specialty shop that catered to forensic hobbyists: a UV reactive dye that was non-toxic, water-soluble, and designed for marking valuable items for theft recovery. I also bought a small UV flashlight that could fit in my purse. At home, with surgical precision that my dental training had given me, I carefully opened the edge of the condom package with a sterilized X-Acto knife. Using a syringe with the finest needle I could find, I injected a minute amount of the dye solution just inside the foil, not touching the condom itself. Under the blacklight, the area glowed blue, but in normal light it was completely invisible. I resealed the package with a tiny amount of adhesive and examined my work. The tampering was undetectable. That evening, I returned the condom to exactly the same position in his gym bag pocket. My heart was pounding so hard, I thought it might leap from my chest. I felt like I had crossed a line I could never step back from, but also that I was finally taking control of a situation that had been making me feel powerless for months. While James was in the shower that night, I installed a tracking app on his phone using his password that I had secretly observed him entering several days before. I felt a strange calm as I did this, as if I had moved beyond emotion into some detached, analytical state. Over the next few days, I created a detailed log of James's schedule, noting discrepancies between what he told me and what the tracking app showed. He said he was at the office downtown, but his location showed him at an address in a residential area north of the city. He claimed to be at a client dinner, but he was at a hotel. Each lie was another cut, but I documented everything dispassionately, building my case. Tomorrow night, he had told me he had an important dinner with potential clients from Boston. I planned to follow him to see where he actually went. The condom was still in his bag. I checked each morning while he was in the shower. I knew that soon all my questions would be answered, though I was increasingly certain I wouldn't like what I discovered. The next evening, James kissed me goodbye with promises to text when his client dinner was wrapping up. I smiled and wished him luck with the Boston executives, my heart racing as I played the role of supportive wife one last time. 20 minutes after he left, I followed, keeping several cars between us in traffic, the tracking app open on my phone as backup. Instead of heading downtown toward the steakhouse where he claimed to be meeting clients, James drove to a boutique hotel in a trendy neighborhood across town. I parked across the street, sinking low in my seat, as I watched him check his appearance in his car mirror before heading inside. 10 minutes later, a silver Audi pulled into the hotel's circular drive. A woman emerged, tall, blonde, professional-looking, in a tailored suit. I recognized her immediately as Amanda Peterson, James's co-worker, whom I'd met at several company functions. My stomach clenched as James appeared in the lobby doorway, his face lighting up when he saw her. They embraced longer than colleagues should, his hand sliding down to rest intimately at the small of her back as they walked inside together. I took photos with my phone's zoom lens, my hands surprisingly steady despite the earthquake happening in my chest. They checked in, not even attempting to be discreet, and took an elevator upstairs. I sat frozen in my car for nearly 20 minutes trying to process what I'd seen, though it merely confirmed what I'd already known in my heart. Finally, I drove to the hotel and took a seat in the dimly lit bar with a clear view of the lobby. I ordered a double whiskey, something I rarely drank, and settled in to wait. I wasn't entirely sure what my plan was, but I couldn't bring myself to drive home to crawl into the bed we shared while knowing what he was doing just miles away. 3 hours and 2 drinks later, my phone rang. The hospital. James had been admitted with a severe allergic reaction. My first thought was oddly detach the condom. He must have used it with Amanda, and the dye had caused a reaction. My second thought was that I should let him suffer alone in his shame, but something propelled me to my feet. Perhaps it was morbid curiosity, perhaps a desire to finally confront him with incontrovertible evidence. The drive to the hospital was surreal. I felt cold, calculating, removed from the woman who had sobbed on Taylor's kitchen floor days earlier. The emergency room was busy, but when I identified myself as James's wife, the nurse's expression shifted subtly, a mixture of pity and discomfort that told me the staff knew exactly what kind of allergic reaction they were treating. James was in a curtained area, looking miserable and startled to see me. An angry rash covered his neck, and according to his chart, extended to more private areas. He attempted a weak smile. "Susanne, thank God. They're saying I had some kind of reaction to something, but I have no idea what it could be. I've never been allergic to anything." I stood at the foot of his bed, arms crossed. "Where were your clients from Boston when this happened, James?" His face fell, then quickly rearranged into innocent confusion. "What, they had to cancel last minute? I was just grabbing dinner alone at the hotel restaurant when I started feeling itchy and swollen." "Which hotel?" I asked, my voice eerily calm. "The Parkview downtown," he lied smoothly. "Interesting, because I followed you to the Archer Hotel on Oak Street. I sat in the bar for 3 hours after watching you check in with Amanda Peterson." The color drained from his face, replaced quickly by the flush of the allergic reaction, and what might have been shame, or more likely just the embarrassment of being caught. "Susanne, it's not what you think," he began, but was interrupted by the doctor entering the curtained area. "Mr. Thompson, your blood work shows elevated markers consistent with an allergic reaction," the doctor said, looking uncomfortable as he glanced between us. "We'll need to ask some additional questions about potential exposures. Sometimes these reactions can be triggered by new laundry detergents, Foods, medications, or, personal products. What kind of personal products? I asked innocently. The doctor shifted uncomfortably. Well, sometimes lubricants or latex products can cause reactions in sensitive individuals. Like condoms, I supplied helpfully. James made a choking sound from the bed. The doctor nodded clearly, wishing to be anywhere else. Yes, that's possible, especially if it's a brand you haven't used before or one with spermicidal coating. That's so interesting, I said, turning to James. I thought we didn't use condoms anymore. Haven't for years. Isn't that right, James? The doctor mumbled something about checking labs and hastily retreated, leaving a suffocating silence in his wake. The hospital staff moving past our curtained area suddenly seemed very busy, very deliberately not looking in our direction. I can explain, James said, his voice hoarse. Please do, I replied, pulling up a chair and sitting down with exaggerated patience. Explain why you were using a condom with Amanda when we haven't used them in our marriage since I got on birth control 8 years ago. Explain why you've been lying about working late when you've been meeting her. Explain the secret phone calls, the password protection, the unexplained receipts. James's face cycled through expressions: surprise, guilt, then most infuriatingly, a flash of anger. If you were more available, more attentive to my needs, maybe I wouldn't have had to look elsewhere, he snapped, immediately revealing his true character when cornered. Something broke inside me. Not my heart, which was already in pieces, but the last thread of respect I had for this man. How long? I asked quietly. Susanne, this isn't the place. How long? Each word was ice. He sighed, deflated. With Amanda, 6 months. But it didn't mean anything. It was just physical. And the others? I asked, an intuitive leap that hit its mark based on his shocked expression. He didn't answer, which was answer enough. I stood up, retrieved his phone from the side table, and used his fingerprint to unlock it while he was too stunned to protest. I found Amanda in his contacts and called the number. James, a breathless voice answered. Are you okay? You left so suddenly. This is Susanne, James's wife, I said calmly. James is currently in the emergency room with an interesting allergic reaction to the condom you two were using. I'm calling to let you know I'll be phoning your husband Michael next to share this delightful news, unless you'd prefer to tell him yourself. There was a gasp, then silence, then crying. I ended the call and scrolled to find Michael's number, which James had helpfully saved under Amanda Husband. I sent Michael a simple text with the hospital name and a brief explanation of why his wife's lover was currently being treated there. I gathered James's clothes, wallet, and keys, stuffed them into a garbage bag a nurse provided upon request, and placed it at the foot of his bed. Your things, I said. Don't come home tonight. Or ever, actually. As I turned to leave, James called after me, panic in his voice. Susanne, wait. What did you do to the condom? Did you tamper with it? I paused at the curtain, allowing myself one small smile. I injected it with a UV reactive dye. Completely harmless, unlike the STDs you could have given me from your multiple affairs. The allergic reaction is just your body rejecting your lies, James. How fitting. With that, I walked out of the hospital into the cool night air, leaving behind the man I had loved and the life I had thought was perfect. I drove home in a fog, the city lights blurring through my tears. Our house, the house we had picked out together, renovated together, filled with 8 years of memories, felt suddenly alien, like I was walking into a movie set of someone else's life. I moved through the rooms in a daze, finally settling in the kitchen where I poured myself a large glass of wine in one of our wedding crystal glasses. The irony wasn't lost on me as I raised the glass in a mock toast to my shattered marriage. My phone buzzed continuously with texts and calls from James, which I ignored. Eventually, I silenced it and placed it face down on the counter, unwilling to read his desperate attempts at damage control. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat on our patio until dawn, watching the sunrise and trying to process how my life had imploded in the span of a few hours. By morning, I had moved beyond shock into a cold, pragmatic clarity. I made a list of what needed to be done, starting with calling a lawyer. By 9 a.m., I had an appointment with one of Chicago's top divorce attorneys for that afternoon. By noon, I had opened a new bank account in my name only and transferred half our joint savings into it, a move my lawyer later confirmed was legal and prudent. By 2 p.m., I had changed the locks on our house, another action my lawyer approved given the circumstances. The meeting with the attorney, a sharp-eyed woman named Diane Goldstein, was both validating and terrifying. She listened to my story without judgment, occasionally making notes, her expression hardening when I described the multiple affairs. "You've done well so far," she said when I finished. "Many clients in your position make emotional decisions that compromise their legal standing, but we have significant work ahead." Diane explained that in Illinois, while we were a no-fault divorce state, evidence of infidelity and financial misconduct could impact property division and potential spousal support. She advised me to begin gathering financial records immediately. Pull bank statements, credit card bills, investment accounts, anything financial for at least the past 3 years. Look for unexplained withdrawals, hidden accounts, unusual patterns. Following her advice, I spent the next day combing through our financial history. What I discovered was even more devastating than the affairs. James had opened multiple credit cards in his name that I knew nothing about. The statements, which I gained access to by guessing his standard password, revealed hotel charges, expensive restaurants, jewelry purchases from high-end stores, none of which had been gifts to me. Most shocking was the discovery of a separate checking account containing nearly $50,000. Statements showed regular transfers from our joint account categorized as business expenses that had actually been diverted to this secret fund. There were also rent payments for an apartment in the city, an apartment I had never seen or known about, presumably where he took Amanda, and who knows how many others. James continued his barrage of calls and texts, cycling between apologies, pleas, and thinly veiled threats. "We can work through this," one message read. "Everyone makes mistakes." Another, "You're overreacting. It wasn't serious." And later, "If you push this, you'll regret it. I'll fight you for everything." I forwarded each message to Diane, who advised me to maintain a record but not respond directly. "Let him dig his own grave," she said. "Every threat, every attempt at manipulation just strengthens our position." 3 days after the hospital incident, Michael Peterson, Amanda's husband, contacted me asking to meet. We arranged to talk at a coffee shop halfway between our homes. He was a quiet man with kind eyes, now shadowed by the same pain I was experiencing. "I suspected something," he said after we'd settled with our coffees. "Amanda's been distant, working late, protective of her phone. All the classic signs, right? But I kept telling myself I was being paranoid." I nodded in understanding. I did the same thing for months. "There's something you should know," he continued, his voice dropping. "Amanda is pregnant. 6 weeks along. She claims it's mine, but with the timing." He trailed off, looking down at his untouched coffee. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. While James and I had put off having children, apparently he had been careless enough to potentially conceive a child with his mistress. "I'm so sorry," I said, genuinely meaning it. My situation was bad enough. Adding a possible pregnancy made Michael's even more complicated. "I've insisted on a paternity test once the baby is far enough along," he said. "But regardless of the results, I'm filing for divorce. I've been speaking with a lawyer as well." We formed an unexpected alliance that day, exchanging contact information and agreeing to share any relevant information we discovered. Before parting, Michael handed me a flash drive. "Amanda's company emails," he said. "She sometimes works from home and stays logged in. There's correspondence between them going back almost a year, not 6 months like your husband claimed. Some of it is explicit. Some discusses meetings at that apartment you mentioned. And there's something about company funds they were accessing together that doesn't sound above board. My lawyer thought your lawyer should see it." That flash drive proved invaluable. Beyond confirming the longer timeline of the affair it contained, veiled references to a financial arrangement between James and Amanda involving client billing. I turned everything over to Diane, who informed me it might indicate embezzlement from their company, a matter that went beyond our divorce into potential criminal territory. While my legal case was building, my emotional state was deteriorating. I lost 10 pounds in 2 weeks, unable to stomach more than a few bites at each meal. Sleep came only in brief, nightmare-filled intervals. I jumped at every sound, half expecting James to appear despite the changed locks. Friends called concerned after hearing rumors, but I couldn't bring myself to explain what had happened more than once or twice. The humiliation was too raw. Eventually, I broke down completely. Alone in our bedroom, a space now tainted by the knowledge that our marriage had been a sham, I curled into a ball and sobbed until my throat was raw and my eyes swollen. I cried for the years wasted, for the children we never had, for the future I had planned that would never come to pass. I cried for the woman I had been, trusting, loving, loyal, who now felt like a naive fool. The physical manifestations of stress appeared quickly. Beyond the weight loss, I developed insomnia that left dark circles under my eyes. Panic attacks struck without warning, in the grocery store, during a patient cleaning, while driving. My hands would shake, my chest constrict, and the world would narrow to a pinpoint as I struggled to breathe through the overwhelming anxiety. Well-meaning friends and family asked questions I couldn't bear to answer. Were there signs? Did you suspect? How could you not know? Each inquiry felt accusatory, as if I should have recognized the betrayal sooner, as if my blindness was a failure on my part, rather than a testament to my trust. The most painful realization was that every memory was now suspect. Our anniversary dinners had he been texting her under the table. The Christmas he surprised me with a weekend in Michigan. Had it been scheduled to coincide with Amanda being out of town? The vacation to Mexico last year, had he been comparing me unfavorably to her as I swam in the ocean? Unaware, I began to question whether any moment in our marriage had been genuine, or if it had all been a performance designed to maintain his comfortable home life while he pursued excitement elsewhere. The final humiliation came when I learned through the dental assistant at my practice, who lived in our neighborhood, that several of our neighbors and mutual friends had known or suspected James's infidelities for months. Apparently, he had been careless enough to be seen around town with Amanda, his hand casually resting on her thigh, at a restaurant, sharing a kiss in a parking lot. These friends had chosen not to tell me to protect me or avoid involvement. Their silence felt like secondary betrayal. Given the possibility of sexually transmitted infections from James's multiple affairs, I made an appointment with my gynecologist for a complete STD panel. Sitting in the waiting room, surrounded by pregnant women and happy couples, was its own special form of torture. The doctor, who had known James and me for years, was professional, but couldn't hide her surprise when I explained why I needed testing. Her pity was almost worse than the fear of positive results. A month after the hospital incident, the divorce proceedings were well underway, but James was making the process as difficult and contentious as possible. He had hired an aggressive attorney known for scorched earth tactics and was challenging every aspect of our separation. James began a campaign to control the narrative among our social circle. According to mutual friends who still spoke to me, he was claiming that I had set him up, even suggesting that I had poisoned him out of unfounded jealousy. He portrayed himself as the victim of a vindictive, unstable wife who had manufactured evidence of affairs that didn't exist. Surprisingly, some people believed him. Friends we had known for years chose sides, some distancing themselves from both of us, others explicitly taking his part. Most hurtful was the reaction from his parents, who had always treated me like a daughter. His mother called one afternoon not to offer support, but to suggest that I seek psychological help for my delusions and vengeful behavior. James told us everything, she said, her voice cold in a way I had never heard before. About how you've been jealous and possessive, checking his phone, following him. How you tampered with his personal items and sent him to the hospital. This isn't the Susanne we thought we knew. I was too shocked to defend myself effectively, managing only to say, "Did he also tell you about the secret apartment, or the multiple women, or the money he's been hiding?" She hung up without responding. That call marked the end of my relationship with the in-laws, who had been my family for 8 years. Their unconditional support of James, despite overwhelming evidence of his betrayal, was perhaps the clearest demonstration of why he had never developed a moral compass. The divorce process itself was becoming increasingly complex. In addition to the division of our assets, James's company had launched an internal investigation based on the emails Michael had provided, suggesting financial impropriety. Amanda had been placed on administrative leave pending the outcome, and James was under scrutiny as well. My meetings with financial advisors and forensic accountants revealed the extent of James's deception. Beyond the secret apartment and credit cards, he had been siphoning money from our joint accounts into offshore investments. When confronted with this evidence during a deposition, James claimed the accounts were for surprise investment opportunities he had planned to reveal to me once they matured. "Your Honor," his attorney argued during a preliminary hearing, "my client was simply trying to build a secure financial future for his family. These funds were never intended for personal use or to deprive Mrs. Thompson of her fair share." The judge, a woman in her 60s with shrewd eyes that seemed to miss nothing, appeared unimpressed by this explanation. Yet Mr. Thompson maintained these accounts in complete secrecy, using misleading labels in their joint financial records to conceal the transfers. This doesn't suggest transparency or family planning. Just as I thought things couldn't get worse, I returned home one evening to find our joint bank accounts had been emptied. James had withdrawn everything, leaving me with nothing but the portion I had previously transferred to my private account. When my attorney contacted his, the response was that he had needed the funds for living expenses since I had unfairly expelled him from the marital home. The financial strain became untenable. Our mortgage was due, and while I had my income from the dental practice, it wasn't enough to cover all our household expenses alone. With no other option, I accepted Taylor's offer to move into her spare bedroom temporarily. "It's just until the court freezes the assets he took," I explained as she helped me pack essentials. "I can't keep up with the mortgage and legal fees on my salary alone." "Stay as long as you need," Taylor insisted. "After what he's done, the least he deserves is to come back to an empty house." The humiliation of leaving my own home felt like another victory for James, but I had no choice. The day I moved my clothes and personal items to Taylor's apartment was the day I saw James and Amanda together in public for the first time since the hospital. They were leaving a restaurant downtown, his hand possessively at her waist, looking for all the world like a legitimate couple rather than the architects of multiple families' destruction. When he saw me across the street, he had the audacity to look annoyed, as if my presence was an inconvenience in his new life. The harassment began shortly after. Anonymous text messages from untraceable numbers suggesting I was mentally unstable, that I had driven James to cheat, that no one would believe my lies about his behavior. My office received calls claiming I was stealing prescription medications. The tires on my car were slashed one night while parked outside Taylor's apartment. There was no direct evidence linking James to these incidents, but the timing was too convenient to be coincidental. My attorney advised documenting everything but warned that proving he was behind the harassment would be difficult without concrete evidence. My sister Catherine flew in from California, taking emergency leave from her job as a software engineer, to support me through the worst of it. Having her fierce loyalty and practical mind on my side gave me strength when I felt myself faltering. She accompanied me to meetings with the attorneys, organized my financial documents, and ran interference with well-meaning but exhausting friends who wanted updates or offered unsolicited advice. "You don't owe anyone explanations," Catherine reminded me one evening as I agonized over whether to correct misinformation James was spreading. "The people who matter know the truth. The rest can think what they want." The most painful confrontations came with mutual friends who had known about James's affairs but remained silent. One couple, the Fosters, who had been our regular dinner companions for years, admitted during an uncomfortable conversation that they had seen James with Amanda at a hotel bar 6 months earlier. "We didn't know what to do," Diane Foster explained weakly. "We thought maybe it was a work thing, or that if it was something else, You might prefer not to know. You preferred to let me live a lie, I said quietly. You sat across from me at dinners asking about our vacation plans and hearing about my work, all while knowing James was making a fool of me. That wasn't your decision to make. We're so sorry, Susanne, Mark Foster said. We should have told you. Their apology meant little. The friendship, like so many others, had been irreparably damaged not just by James's actions, but by their complicity through silence. An unexpected ally emerged in James's younger brother, Robert. He contacted me through Catherine, asking to meet privately. Over coffee, he handed me an envelope containing printed emails and text messages from James. He's been asking me to lie for him, Robert explained, to say he was with me on nights he was with her. I covered for him once early on before I realized what was happening. I've felt terrible about it ever since. The messages included exchanges where James explicitly discussed using Robert as an alibi, joked about keeping his two lives separate, and even complained about my suspicions in a way that made it clear they were entirely justified. There were also references to the company funds he and Amanda had been misappropriating. I can't be part of this anymore, Robert said. What he's doing to you, to his company, to everyone who trusted him, it's wrong. I'll testify if you need me to. With Robert's evidence added to what Michael had provided, and my own documentation, we prepared for mediation, the last step before a potential court battle if no agreement could be reached. James had initially refused mediation, but the mounting evidence against him and a stern warning from the judge had changed his position. The day before mediation was scheduled, I returned to our house to retrieve some additional documents. As I sorted through papers in the home office, I noticed a small, unfamiliar device partially hidden behind the bookshelf. Further inspection revealed it to be a camera angled to capture the entire room. Horrified, I began searching other rooms and found 2 more cameras, one in the living room and, most disturbingly, one hidden in our bedroom. My attorney arranged for a security expert to examine the devices. They were high-quality, remotely accessible cameras that had been professionally installed. The footage could be viewed from anywhere with the right access credentials. Data logs showed they had been in place for at least 3 months, well before I discovered James's infidelity. The violation of having been recorded in my most private moments in my own home without my knowledge or consent was overwhelming. The security expert suggested the possibility that James had not only watched the footage himself, but potentially shared it with others. This suspicion was confirmed when the forensic examination of James's devices revealed cloud storage containing intimate videos of us that had been accessed by multiple IP addresses. The final indignity was learning that James had shared these recordings with at least 2 people, Amanda and another woman whose identity we couldn't confirm. Text messages recovered from a backup of his phone included links to the videos with comments too degrading to bear repeating. By the time we entered mediation, I was no longer the trusting, heartbroken woman who had followed her husband to a hotel. I had been transformed by pain and betrayal into someone hardened, resolute, and determined to emerge from this nightmare with my dignity and fair share intact. The day of mediation, I arrived at the law offices downtown with Catherine and Taylor flanking me like guards. I had chosen my outfit carefully, a tailored charcoal suit that projected confidence rather than the victim I sometimes still felt like. James was already seated in the conference room with his attorney looking smug until he saw Robert enter behind me. The mediator, a retired judge with a reputation for fairness, outlined the process before we began presenting our respective positions. James's attorney went first, painting a picture of a hard-working husband blindsided by an irrationally suspicious wife who had driven him to seek comfort elsewhere after years of emotional neglect. When it was Diane's turn, she methodically dismantled this narrative with evidence, the financial records showing years of deception, the emails between James and Amanda planning their encounters, Robert's testimony about being asked to provide false alibis, and most damning, the documentation of the hidden cameras and shared intimate videos. My client has been subjected to financial abuse, emotional manipulation, invasion of privacy, and public humiliation, Diane concluded. Mr. Thompson's actions go beyond simple infidelity into potentially criminal behavior. Ms. Thompson is entitled to not only her fair share of marital assets, but additional considerations given these extraordinary circumstances. As Diane spoke, I watched James's face transform. The confidence drained away, replaced first by shock, then by a dawning realization that his position was untenable. When the mediator called a break 2 hours into the session, James's attorney requested a private conference with him. They disappeared into a side room for nearly 45 minutes. During their absence, an assistant entered our conference room with an envelope that had just been delivered by courier. Inside was a thumb drive and a note from Michael Peterson. More evidence. Amanda's work computer was just seized by corporate security. Their IT department found these and thought you should have copies. The thumb drive contained emails between James and Amanda discussing not just their affair, but a systematic scheme to inflate client invoices and divert the excess funds. There were references to skimming off the top and detailed instructions on how to alter billing records to avoid detection. The potential legal implications extended far beyond our divorce into corporate fraud territory. When James and his attorney returned, the change in approach was immediate. Gone were the aggressive demands and accusations. Instead, they presented a settlement offer that, while not entirely fair, was a significant improvement from their initial position. Diane leaned close to me. They know they're cornered. We can push for more. Over the next 3 hours, we negotiated a settlement that included the house would be sold with proceeds divided equally, my legal fees would be covered by James, I would receive 60% of our joint retirement accounts. All furniture and personal items I had left in the house would be returned undamaged. A non-disclosure agreement preventing James from disparaging me publicly. A restraining order requiring James to stay at least 500 feet from me, my workplace and my residence. Most importantly, the settlement acknowledged the hidden cameras and required James to destroy all recordings, sign an affidavit confirming no copies existed, and pay additional damages for the privacy violation. As we approached the final agreement, there was an unexpected interruption. 2 men in suits entered the conference room and asked to speak with James privately. They introduced themselves as representatives from the company's legal department. James's face went ashen as he followed them out. He returned 30 minutes later looking utterly defeated. Without meeting anyone's eyes, he signed every document placed before him, offering no further objections or negotiations. Later, Diane learned from her contacts that James and Amanda were both being terminated effective immediately, and that the company was cooperating with authorities on a criminal investigation into the financial improprieties revealed in the emails. With the settlement signed and the mediation concluded, I expected to feel triumphant. Instead, I felt hollow, exhausted by the months of battle and the years of deception that preceded them. As I prepared to leave, James approached me, ignoring his attorney's attempt to stop him. "Susanne," he said, his voice breaking, "I never meant for any of this to happen. It started as just a fling, something exciting. I never stopped loving you." "Don't," I said quietly. "Don't insult me by pretending this was about love. This was about your ego, your entitlement, your belief that rules didn't apply to you. You didn't betray me because you fell in love with someone else. You betrayed me because you could, because it was easy, because you never respected me enough to be honest." "That's not true," he insisted, tears forming. "Ask yourself why I started looking elsewhere. We grew apart. You were always working, always too tired. You stopped trying." For a moment, I almost fell back into the pattern of accepting blame, of wondering what I could have done differently. Then I remembered the hidden cameras, the shared videos, the multiple affairs that predated any problems in our marriage. "James," I said, gathering my belongings, "I wasn't perfect. No one is. But nothing I did or didn't do justifies what you've done. The difference between us is that I can acknowledge my failings without using them to excuse destroying someone else's life." "Please," he said, grabbing my wrist as I turned to leave. "I've lost everything. My job, my reputation. Amanda's left me since the pregnancy test came back showing Michael is the father. I have nothing left. Can't we at least talk about trying again? I gently removed his hand. No, James, we can't. Not because I'm angry or vengeful, but because I finally see you clearly. You're only here, only sorry because everyone else has abandoned you. Your remorse isn't for hurting me, it's for the consequences you're facing. What am I supposed to do now? He asked, a hint of his old entitlement creeping back into his voice. That's not my problem anymore, I replied. I spent 8 years making your life comfortable while you lied to my face. I'm done taking responsibility for your happiness. As I walked out of the conference room with my sister and friends, I heard James call after me one last time. I didn't turn around. There was nothing left to say to the man who had once been the center of my world and was now just another painful chapter I was determined to close. That evening, I signed a lease on a small but sunny condo across town. As I accepted the keys from the property manager, I felt the first genuine moment of peace I'd experienced in months. This space was mine alone. No memories, no ghosts, no cameras in the walls. Just a clean slate where I could begin to rebuild. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I stood in my new condo surveying the space I had created for myself. Gone were the expensive but impersonal furnishings James had insisted upon. In their place were comfortable, colorful pieces that reflected my own taste. A vibrant blue sofa, bookshelves filled with novels I'd always wanted to read, artwork created by local artists I'd discovered at weekend markets. My transformation hadn't been limited to my living space. I'd cut my long brown hair into a stylish bob, started a rigorous fitness routine that helped channel my anger into strength and rediscovered interests I'd set aside during my marriage, painting hiking weekly dinners with friends I'd made in a divorce support group. James had fallen far from his previous success. Through mutual acquaintances, I learned he had lost his condo when he couldn't secure new employment after being fired. The criminal investigation into the financial fraud had resulted in charges, though he had negotiated a plea deal that kept him out of prison in exchange for full restitution and probation. His relationship with Amanda had imploded spectacularly when the paternity test confirmed Michael as the father of her child. According to Robert, who still checked in with me occasionally, James was living in a small apartment and working as a pharmaceutical sales rep for a much less prestigious company, his career in medical device sales effectively over. I had successfully moved my career forward, leveraging my dental hygiene experience into a consulting position with a dental product manufacturer. The role offered better pay, more flexible hours, and the satisfaction of helping design products that would improve patient care. My colleagues were supportive, and for the first time in my professional life, I felt truly valued for my expertise rather than just my pleasant chairside manner. On an ordinary Tuesday morning, exactly 1 year after finding that fateful condom, I discovered something that once again changed everything. The pregnancy test in my bathroom showed 2 pink lines, clear and undeniable. James and I had been intimate one last time before I discovered his betrayal, a night I had almost forgotten in the trauma that followed. The irony wasn't lost on me. After years of postponing children for James's career for the right time that never came, I was pregnant just as I had finally rebuilt my life on my own terms. I sat on the bathroom floor staring at the test emotions cycling between shock, fear, and surprisingly a tentative joy. The decision about whether to tell James wasn't an easy one. We hadn't spoken since the final mediation session, and the thought of having him back in my life in any capacity was unsettling. After consulting with both my therapist and lawyer, I decided that regardless of our past, he had a right to know about the child. I arranged to meet him at a neutral location, a quiet cafe near my office. He looked older, the confident swagger gone, replaced by a hesitancy I had never seen in him before. When I told him about the pregnancy, his reaction surprised me. "I don't think I'm in a position to be a father," he said after a long silence. "My life is complicated right now, unstable. I would just disappoint you both." For once, James was being honest about his limitations, showing more self-awareness than he had during our entire marriage. We discussed options, and ultimately he signed away his parental rights in exchange for being relieved of financial responsibility, a decision that my lawyer assured me was legally sound if unconventional. "Are you sure this is what you want?" my sister Catherine asked, when I told her about James's decision. "Raising a child alone isn't easy." "I'm not alone," I replied, looking around at the support network I had built. "And yes, I'm sure. I'd rather have no father for my child than one who sees them as an obligation or inconvenience." My pregnancy brought unexpected alliances. Taylor was by my side for every doctor's appointment and helped design the nursery in soft yellows and greens. Catherine flew in monthly bringing tiny clothes and books from California. Even Michael Peterson, who had remained a friendly acquaintance through our shared trauma, offered support, having experienced single parenthood himself after his divorce from Amanda was finalized. The most surprising development in my recovery was the gradual rebuilding of my capacity to trust. I had assumed James's betrayal would leave me permanently suspicious, unable to form connections. Instead, the experience had refined rather than destroyed my ability to recognize authenticity in others. I became more discerning, yes, but not closed off. I began cautiously dating again 7 months after the divorce. Nothing serious, just coffee or dinner with men my friends introduced me to or whom I met through professional events. I was transparent about my pregnancy and impending single motherhood, which naturally filtered out anyone not prepared for such complexity. The men who remained interested impressed me with their openness to a non-traditional situation. One such man, Daniel, a pediatrician I met at a healthcare conference, became a steady presence in my life. Our relationship developed slowly, built on mutual respect and clear communication. He attended childbirth classes with me, asked thoughtful questions about my boundaries, and never pushed for more than I was ready to give. 5 months into my pregnancy, I had a chance encounter with James that tested my healing progress. I was shopping for baby items when I spotted him across the department store with a woman I didn't recognize. Our eyes met briefly and I felt nothing. Not anger, not pain, not even resentment. Just a calm acknowledgement of a person who had once been central to my life and now was merely peripheral. He nodded awkwardly and moved away quickly, clearly uncomfortable. I continued selecting tiny clothes for my daughter, realizing that true healing wasn't about forgetting what had happened, but about it losing its power to hurt me. My daughter Lily was born on a spring morning, a healthy 7 pounds with a full head of dark hair and eyes that seemed to take in everything around her with ancient wisdom. Holding her in the hospital, surrounded by Catherine Taylor and Daniel, I felt a completeness I had never experienced before. The journey to this moment had been unimaginably painful, but looking at Lily's perfect face, I couldn't regret any of it. In the years that followed, I occasionally received updates about James through mutual connections. He never remarried, moving between relationships and jobs, never quite regaining the status or success he had before the scandal. I felt no satisfaction in his struggles, only a distant pity for someone who had sacrificed authentic connection for temporary gratification. The condom that was meant to hide his betrayal ultimately revealed not just his deception, but my own capacity for resilience I never knew I had. The woman who followed her husband to a hotel, who injected a condom with tracking dye, who sobbed on Taylor's kitchen floor. She seemed like someone from another lifetime. In her place stood a woman who had learned that sometimes losing everything you thought you wanted opens the door to everything you actually need. If you're watching this and struggling with betrayal or loss, remember that the most important relationship you'll ever have is with yourself. Trust your instincts when they tell you something isn't right. Stand firm in your worth when others try to diminish it. And know that even in your darkest moments, you're building strength you don't yet realize you'll need for the brightness ahead. Have you ever had to completely rebuild your life after betrayal? Leave a comment below sharing how you found your way forward. Like and subscribe if my story resonated with you, and share this video with someone who might need to hear that there's life, beautiful, authentic life, waiting on the other side of heartbreak. Thank you for listening to my journey. and I wish you strength in whatever chapter you're currently writing in your own.